Morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Um, Last few videos I've been doing were about the Bill of Rights, and I'll probably do another video about the preamble. And we're talking about seizing people's guns and property because they're gun owners, and demonizing, let's say, effects with the guns, attachments aftermarket to the guns, any kind of property, even ammunition after the fact. And thinking about the Fifth Amendment, I've read the Fifth Amendment probably 3 or 4 times in my lifetime, but it's probably the most known amendment out of all the Bill of Rights. But people don't know where to look for it. Okay, so it might appear a little confusing how it relates to everything else, more on a court related matter. The judiciary actually processing you as a perhaps criminal. Okay, the police arresting you, you going to court and whatnot. The right of you to be silent so you don't incriminate yourself. Case law since the Fifth Amendment, like Miranda, protect you from being in custodial interrogation. That means you are detained or you feel you are arrested. Then you are asked questions about your crime without being advised of your Miranda rights that states you have a right to be silent. You have a right to basically invoke the Fifth Amendment right and not testify against yourself, not give a statement against yourself, not give any evidence against yourself. Okay? There's all kinds of case law throughout the last 200 years. Also, as a police officer, one incident I thought was interesting where suspects are always running, okay? And suspects are detained by the police. And you, as a suspect or defendant, you believe your rights are violated because you're stopped for no reason. Unfortunately, the police may not know what actually happened before detaining you, and they can't tell you the exact reason at that exact time why they stopped you. Okay, but the courts have found in the last 200 years you have a right to run away from the police. You don't have to answer the police anytime they stop you. It's a misnomer, or it's misunderstood that you should cooperate with the police, and it's nice to cooperate with the police. Okay, this is why. If you flee from a scene, from police, from the government, perhaps that could be added to the probable cause that a crime did occur. Therefore, they're going to search you down even harder to stop you and figure out what happened. Okay, it's your right to run away from the police, but it might infer a certain amount of guilt. Okay, going off on a tangent, that's basically the Fourth Amendment in seizing the body. People don't understand this, but the lawful determination of when you are arrested resides only in your mind, not the police officers. Okay, if you're detained and taken out of your car just for the police officer's safety, and they want to do a quick pat down of the car, they arrested you before any crime occurred. Even if you have a couple kilos in the car, they didn't know that beforehand. They arrested you before the facts. That's a bad arrest. Okay? Unless that police officer had some kind of afore-knowledge about contraband being in your car, and if they targeted you just out of the blue, and they said, oh, well, he looks mean, so I'm going to take him out for my own safety. Why do you look mean, and why do the police feel unsafe, especially if you're cooperating? Then they use that as an excuse to toss your car. Highly illegal, proven 1,000,000 times it's a bad arrest. Police officers get away with it because they write their probable cause up after the fact at the desk, and they ham up otherwise drug dealers but they're bad arrests. So in this segment, I'm going over the Fifth Amendment. Okay, Fourth and Fifth Amendment are close together, and it has to do with seizing people. Okay, it has to do with you not being a witness against yourself. You not being put in a position where you have to testify against yourself, or you're compelled. You're interrogated. You're beat up. You're under that one light bulb in a dark room, and you can't see who's beating the hell out of you in the back of your head. Okay, there was a lot of arrests back then, especially in the 1800s and early 1900s, the 20th century, that is. And case law developed after that based on the Fourth and Fifth Amendment to protect your rights, to basically codify what the Fourth and Fifth Amendment means to save you. And it's always better to let a criminal back out than to have the government look very corrupt. Okay. A lot of judiciary thought that way, and that's a good way to think. So you always keep the people free, and you always want to protect them from a tyrannical government. But again, look how corrupt our federal government and judiciary is now, with liberals in there that won't go by the Constitution. Okay. So again, with any amendment to the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, read it, know what was meant when they wrote it at that time, and apply it only to that time. Or, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Apply it to now based on that time. Because the liberals, who are basically communists in nature, they want to circumvent the whole Constitution. They want a totalitarian government to rule everybody. Okay? So they will violate your rights in a heartbeat if it means setting case law and making sure it can happen to the next guy. That's how bad a lot of these liberal judges are. Okay? But if you're a real criminal, you notice how these liberals want to make every excuse under the law, under the Constitution, to let these criminals out against that same Constitution, against that same law that might be lawful and very just. They want to destabilize basic American tenets. Okay? And the biggest obstacle in their view of seeing a one world government and communism, where all the people are equal except for them in charge, except for that same judiciary. That's the rub. Communism would work if everybody was moral and Christian. Christian communities are communal in nature, but they're free because they respect the individual as well. You'll never hear that from an actual Christian saying, we're a Christian community. But some scholars would say, yeah, in a societal or sociological realm, you guys are communists too because you believe in the commune, the community. No, we believe in individual freedoms and what is in our heart and how much our heart can grow under Christianity, under Jesus Christ. But anyways, going off on a tangent, here's the Fifth Amendment, and I'll be sure to read it more correctly. It says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital, comma, or otherwise infamous crime, unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, comma, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. This first part of the Fifth Amendment, they wrote basically to curtail people from being forced to also testify against themselves or give evidence in trial, with the exception of a grand jury that you can be compelled to testify at. Okay. And in cases arising with the land and naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Okay. Meaning that if you're in the military, you're under a strict code that you could be forced to testify against yourself, especially in a wartime situation. Okay. People spout off a lot about tribunals, put everybody, that's basically doing all this corruption in our federal government in a military tribunal, and let's see how they whistle Dixie then. I agree with that, but it has to be in a wartime situation where the crime or the offense was of such treachery that the only choice is basically you defend your position right here and now, or you're going to be killed and executed. Executed and killed, excuse me. So there's a lot of vagaries in this first statement. Okay. Then there was a semicolon. So the continuation of that whole sentence under the Fifth Amendment continues. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. What that means is the double jeopardy clause. Courts have found that once you're acquitted from one main offense, or whatever the offense is, you're acquitted, you cannot be retried for the same offense. Okay. What case law has also proved as once there's additional, different, completely different evidence of that same crime, you can be brought back to court. A lot of people overlook that part in the public realm when they're talking about it on these news agencies and stuff. Double jeopardy means you won't be tried for the same crime. You can't be tried for it twice, once acquitted. Okay. But there are exceptions. Okay. You could have a similar crime that the DA or the prosecution did not, or the U.S. attorney did not bring up yet. Okay. That's related to the same crime. And you're acquitted on, let's say, RICO and Murder International, okay, as a big cartel. But there was tax evasion also they didn't charge you with initially. If you're acquitted from that whole set of crimes to begin with, then if there's associated crimes with that, they can still use the same evidence from the first trial and convict you on these completely different charges. Now, some judges in judiciaries might say, oh, why didn't you bring this all at once? Okay, like financial crimes are a lot different than actual criminal cases where there's actually victims. Okay, and they might not have known about it at the time, but it is related to that same criminal enterprise. So double jeopardy does not apply. Okay. People forget that when they're talking big about, OJ being acquitted. Maybe there was other crimes he did related to the double homicide, and they can use the same evidence for a different set of criminal actions to prove him guilty, and it happens all the time. And then you'll see someone like OJ when he's still held, because he's not out of the woods yet. You'll see him plead right away to those smaller crimes. Happens every day. Okay. Nor shall be compelled, this is a continuation. Okay, there's a semicolon, and then it says, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, comma, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Okay? Without due process of law, comma, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So let me go over that again. Nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, which is directly pleading the fifth like you hear on the TV all the time. Okay, that's for any criminal offense. That's why you can shut up anytime anyone asks you questions and they're investigating a crime. You can shut up, run, or walk away. Okay, you have a right to leave, especially when you know you didn't commit any crime. I don't suggest it. I suggest you cooperate, give direct answers of truth, and then after that, if they still try to physically detain you or violate any of your rights, you have a right to defend yourself against that tyrannical government. It's written right here. Okay, it's written in the Fourth Amendment as well. Okay. Let's start from the top. Semicolon, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, comma. Now, going back to Trump and that errant statement that was bogus. I mean, it was beyond Americanism, the way he said it. But we all say stupid things that might appear very bizarre at times. And in the heat of the moment, who knows? Okay. My president, I voted for. I trust to a great degree, but I still believe in my individualism enough not to trust him that much. Okay. Here is basically saying without due process, you can't go to any court of law. The government cannot seize your life. They cannot execute you because, a whole posse coming after you and judging you right there and then and killing you would be murder. The government cannot do that either. Liberty, that's stopping you. That's your freedom to move. Okay, your freedom to do what you want. Or property. They just can't come in and seize your property without due process. Okay, perhaps seizing your property, like the Bundy's dispute and everything for the last 20 years. Okay, they know the Constitution and they took the government up on it and won. We need more Americans like that. Okay, but what would be due process? Perhaps the government has a claim to your land because of something very technical. Okay, like eminent domain, and then something with your land is going to help the public, the entire public, not an individual in the government. You can't do that with the Fifth Amendment either. Okay, but something on your property would help the public. Okay, what would be a good idea for that government, that local government? Okay, write a petition, send you a petition, and make you an offer, and describe why they need your land or why they must remove you from your land in a good customary amount of time. Okay. Eminent domain is basically the king in Old English common law seizing your property for the public good so that they can do something better, like make a hospital, make a highway. Okay, bring in more shops and stuff and more, let's say, manufacturing and commercial outlets, because that would employ more people. Okay, but without due process, part of that due process is they would compensate you too. They would compensate you also. Fair market value is usually what they say. Okay. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So these last two segments of this long sentence is basically, if there's a crime that occurs, the government has to go through a due process to seize your life, to seize your liberty and actually detain you, and to take your property. Okay, for a lot of criminal acts, you do time and you're supposed to pay the fines also. Okay, people forget that. And this last section, nor shall private property be taken for public use, comma, without just compensation. That has to do with more civil matters. Basically, the king or the government, so to speak, use an eminent domain for the public good. They can do that, but they have to go through certain steps. Okay, perhaps they'll send you a check right in the mail saying, we want to buy your property within 1 year. We are offering with this check $2.3 million. Okay, because you might have a business on it or it's a farm or something. If the government does that and you decide to, it's open and shut there. Okay, you agree with the government, you sign the check or any other contract that you're getting paid for it, and it's all over with. But their best bet would be to send you a letter, ask you to come in, tell them what they're telling you what their intent is, and then they negotiate with you to make a fair market offer. Okay, so you're compensated for your property. All right, basic common sense stuff, and common law English was pretty dead on, and it helped the people. And as it got away from the king or the oligarchy, not the oligarchy, okay, the monarchy in England, and they started to get away from that and give it the actual serfs and the serfdom more and more rights. for the individual people to protect themselves against such tyrants as a monarch. Okay, you can see a lot of common law develops that is basic common sense because individualism is the way to go. That's total liberty and it's total freedom. So let's read the whole thing one more time. No person shall be held to answer for a capital, comma, or otherwise infamous crime, comma, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, comma, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces, comma, or in the militia, comma, when in actual service in the time of war or public danger, semicolon. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, semicolon. Nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, comma, nor be deprived of life, comma, liberty, or property, comma, without due process of law, comma, nor shall private property be taken for public use, comma, without just compensation. This appears to be a very difficult amendment, so to speak, but it's one sentence. Okay, it's a correct sentence. And it clearly states parameters the government has to abide by. All right. Fat chance with all these protests and these kids breaking bad and telling us adults, grown adults, what we can own, what we can possess, and that the government shall not try to take that property from us. Those youth, how many of them do you think knows this Fifth Amendment? I read this in high school and I read this in college. Okay. I understood it the first time I read it. All right. Adhering to the Constitution. As well, any of these things that occur in the Fifth Amendment, a regular citizen cannot do to another citizen. So what are these children demanding? They're demanding pure tyranny. Excuse me. They want a tyrannical government to what? Ensure their safe space? To ensure that they get free welfare in another 10 years when they're jacked out of their minds with psychotropics and SSRIs? What gives a 17-year-old who can't vote the right to demand to parents or adults that they can leave the school when they want and they can go protest guns? They don't understand the Fifth Amendment. They surely don't understand the Second Amendment or the Fourth Amendment or any of the Bill of Rights. Why? Because if they understood the Bill of Rights was for them specifically to stay free from this day on into the future, they wouldn't demand other citizens do whatever the hell they say. Okay? The least of which, disarm and don't defend yourself. So, I hope this video helped, and if you can share this with perhaps people growing up, younger age, anybody else that hasn't read the Bill of Rights in the last 20 years, hey, I haven't read it in so long, probably 15 to 20 years or so. But I know I can look it up. I know what it means, and I know already in my mind it's there if I need to pull it out to defend myself against a tyrannical government, against a tyrannical group of youth. Okay? Like I stated before, that are acting Nazi in character, but they basically are being pushed by the Democrat National Committee or National Party to overthrow our American government and introduce us to communism, the American style communism. And if you look at what Obama already had, we had 8 years of that. We can't have that ever again in any 100-year span, let alone another 2 or 3 years after Obama. Never. Okay? Do me a favor, please just share this, and I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.